Hotep family, Kaba Hiawatha Kamene. Just coming on, talk about a few things that we need to really get into to get a sense of who we are as a people and what it is that we have to do. As we move through this process, there's so much information that's available and so much misinformation that has been given out. And over the years, as I've studied the Moors and come to understand the Moors, there's a very distinct science behind what it is that we should look at in understanding who the Moors were. And I just want to preface my conversation with you this afternoon by telling you a story that happened back in the late 90s. I was asked by members of the Moorish Science Temple in Baltimore, Maryland, to come out and to sit with the members. Now, these members that were here, they had been following my work for a while, not like it is now. This was total underground work, my presentations that I had done in various places, my interest in the Moors. I had just done a 5-part series on the Moors. I was about to do another 3-part, which I have up on Instagram in the in my bio, in the link. And I went there, went by bus, picked me up, went to location, went to the Embryonic Moorish Science Temple, Baltimore, Maryland. And the elders were there. Now, these elders were children when Noble Drew Ali was leading the Moorish Science Temple. These were actual members of the Moorish Science Temple as children. Their parents were members, and they were children. And so they knew, in a sense, Noble Drew Ali. And they asked me if I would be willing to come to their temple and do presentations on African history. And I began to talk to them about Moorish history and what I could bring to them as it relates to Moorish science. And the lead elder said, no, that's not what we want you to do. They said, we respect you, but we don't want you to do Moorish history. They said, we want you to do African history. He said, because they said Moorish history is African history. And I did. I used to visit it once a month. I would bring my son, who was really very young. We used to drive to Baltimore. And we would, by this time I had had a car, and we would drive. And so the reason why I want to start it off this way is to help us understand the whole picture. There were some requests on Instagram when it was said that I'd be doing this, and they said, can you go back beyond 710? Because that's really what we focus on in many ways. And the reason why we focus on 710 AD, when Tariq and Tarif, who was his lieutenant, first went in 710, and then Tariq would follow in 711 AD. And we do a lot of focusing on that, and rightfully so, because Western civilization is based on that meeting of these individuals. So there's no question the importance of that wave of Africans. But even when you look at Africans in Spain, we also have to understand that there's evidence of Africans in what we call Spain today, the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Spain. There's evidence of Africans there 1200 BC. There's evidence of the 25th dynasty under when you're going down the line of 25th dynasty or Sixnapatin Neset Bitiyu or pharaohs. You see that Taharka, the son of Pianki, nephew to Shabaka, was in Spain. There are recordings of Africans in Spain because Spain geographically is the location where North Africans through what's called the Strait of Gibraltar would be able to get into that part of Europe. Not to mention that this whole area was occupied by Africans for thousands of years. And later generations who's doing this research will pick up where this generation of scholars are coming from. You'll find that there are far, far, far more years to go before we ever really understand our history as a human family. And see, this is what the challenge is. We are with a people who are, when I say that, I'm speaking about those who would wish to offend people, specifically melanated people. We are around a people who have no shame in terms of claiming rights and responsibilities and inventions, and they had nothing. They weren't even on the earth when it was done. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just do a real brief. I'd like to cover millions of years in less than 20 minutes. Because for me, this is getting to a point where it's just a little bit ridiculous. And I think that this has to go now because of the history that we're looking at. Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, the great Senegalese scholar, tells us that the human family came in 6 forms, 6 different levels. And in coming through those levels, they advanced themselves. Every level, the very best of that level, moved on to create the next level. So we're going to go back in time. We're going to go back millions of years to the very first separation between the common ancestor in Central and Southern Africa. The first group of people that would lead to who we are, Homo sapiens sapiens, Dr. Diop calls them Australopithecus robustus. The very best of Australopithecus robustus developed themselves and became Australopithecus gracile. Australopithecus gracile, the very best of them became Homo habilis. The very best of Homo habilis, the human of ability, the tool maker, became Homo erectus, who stood up straight. Changed the whole dynamic of the physical body of the human being. Homo erectus then developed themselves and became who we now call Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens, the very best of Homo sapiens, developed into Homo sapiens sapiens. And towards the end of this particular segment that we're talking about in Central and Southern Africa, you have a group of Africans who are going to refine their thoughts, their abilities. They're going to become hunter-gatherers. They are now on the grasslands and they're living their lives. They're going to become hunter and gatherers. They are the Tua Mbuti people, derogatorily called pygmy. Through their history, because we don't have, there are streams and other things I have to go deep inside of this conversation, but in order to understand the Moors, there's something that we all have to come to grips with, and that is that we're talking about Africans. We're talking about the original human family. And we're talking about human beings that are going to travel around the world in waves. These same Tua Mbuti are going to inhabit Asia. They're going to inhabit Europe. They're going to inhabit America. They're going to inhabit Australia and all of the Oceania, which they call these islands now, Oceania, out in the Far East. And they're going to inhabit these lands. And this is going to be the original human family. There is no other people on the planet at this time. There are no people that we know of as Chinese, and there are no people that we know of as German. There's no people that we know of as indigenous Americans. There is only one people, and that is the Tua Mbuti, derogatorily called pygmy. And I give you that only, the derogatory term, is because it's been pushed on us for so long. We wouldn't know Tua Mbuti are the same people because the the Tua Mbuti have been made fun of. Whether it be Otta Abenga, or I should say Otta Benga, who was put in a human zoo to be laughed at, or to who we call the Venus, Sarah gave their name. Another one made fun of. And so we've somewhat become embarrassed by some of our ancestors not realizing if it weren't for those individuals, we wouldn't be here today. And not only that, but within their own generation, within their own time span, whether it be Australopithecus robustus or gracile or Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Homo sapiens, and even Homo sapiens sapiens, every one of them had their geniuses. And it's those geniuses that moved themselves to the next level of consciousness. When Africans went through a morphological and physiological change during the Ice Age and during that time up in the northern area, Africans were creating civilizations, and they grew. And when I say grow, I mean that they grow in other ways. Their foods, their lifestyles, they grew tall, very tall, very, very tall. And so in understanding that Africans are growing, they are now going to give birth to what we call the Kingdom of Kush, which is in the northeast quadrant. There are going to be Southern Africans that are going to develop the Monomotapa Empire. There are going to be the Tua Mbuti that are going to travel over to the west, and they are going to create the civilizations that we know now, like Nok culture in Nigeria. But it's also important to know that they went up into North Africa. Africans. The people that they're showing you now, these are not people that were there. They were just not there. This area was inhabited by thoroughly and totally pigmented people. And science shows that. And the deeper we go, and the further back we go, the blacker we go. This is what science is now teaching us. Now you know why, family, they didn't want us to learn how to read. Because they knew that this information would eventually come. Many of them knew. Some of them had no idea. Some of them still don't know. Because fundamentally, they're ignorant people. They don't know. They don't care to know. And I really don't care to teach them that. I want to talk to you so that we can get a grounding in who the Moors were. There's a lot of discussion on what the word Moor means. I understand that. Okay, I can accept that. And I'm with you. Okay. To me, Moor means black. Okay. The same way that Moor term was used when Africans went into Europe 710. That became the word to describe these pigmented people. That word Moor, post 1492, through its Latin base, through Spain, coming to this part of the world, 1492, would now, that word would mean the same thing, but it would change within their own language, which they got from Africans, Ngr, which became Negro. But before it was Moor, the term they used, Greeks. See, this is the first time they're coming in contact with African people. So they're wondering, who are these people, these pigmented people? So they say they have burnt face. So they call them Ethiops. The land was Ethiopia. The land